Hi everyone, thanks for joining me today as I answer your photography questions, and thank you to those who submitted questions when I posted saying that I was going to be doing this Q&A. I'm going to jump right in, and the first question is from my friend Karen, and she asks, what is your favorite thing to photograph? I am obsessed with taking pictures of flowers, macro photography, where you get right up close and get all of the details, and also water drops. I just love it. I find it so interesting to see it up close and see details that you wouldn't really notice if you were looking around. So that's my current favorite thing to photograph. I'm also quite interested in taking long exposure pictures at the beach just after sunset. So around about dusk, when the light is going, I can really slow down my shutter speed and smooth out the movement of the waves, and I'm really enjoying doing that as well. Angela said, talk to me about framing and composition. I am actually planning on filming another video, or possibly 2 videos, on how to take better photographs regardless of which camera you have. So look out for those. Hopefully I'll get to that soon. But I guess a quick tip would be the rule of thirds. A rule of thirds is you kind of divide the picture that you're going to take into thirds, like this grid shows, and then if you place your subject on one of those lines, or where 2 of those lines intersect, that's just a naturally pleasing place for it to be in a picture. It naturally pleases the eye and makes for a good composition. Charlotte asked, how do you make time-lapse? Time-lapse videos are made with a series of photographs in which you just tweak the subject slightly in between each one. So if you think of Wallace and Gromit, that was made with time-lapse. My kids have made some time-lapse videos. I will link one of them here for you to see. The most important thing when it comes to time-lapse photography is to keep your camera in exactly the same position in between shots. So you really want to use a good sturdy tripod. Try and keep your lighting consistent as well. Then to create your time-lapse, you need to take a picture of the object, move it slightly, take another picture, move it slightly, take another picture, move it slightly. That's all time-lapse is. It's a bunch of photographs put together to give the illusion of movement. The smaller the amount of movement between each photograph, the smoother your movie is going to look. Now, this is very time consuming. Noah's made a time-lapse that is around, I think, 40 seconds or so, and it took him 2.5 hours to take the pictures. So it can be very, very time consuming. It blows my mind that people have made feature-length films using time-lapse, but that's how it's done. You take all of the photographs and then you put them together in a video editing program, and your eye just flows through them. And there you go, that's how you do it. Margie asked, what camera would you recommend to begin with for blogging, Instagram, etc.? A camera that is good but not very expensive to start out with. The best camera to use is the camera that you have in your hand, and if all you have is your phone, then use your phone camera. I've seen amazing pictures taken with phones. You don't have to have fancy equipment, but if you're wanting a DSLR, then I would recommend just getting one secondhand. You can look on eBay. Any of the Canon Rebel series or the Canon EOS series, they're great cameras. I would recommend, probably wouldn't go older than maybe a Canon 450D or something like that, but they're good cameras. Just get the one with the kit lens and go from there. It's really not the camera that makes the difference, I promise you. Yes, I have amazing equipment and I've invested in lenses and cameras and all sorts of things along the way, but if you don't know how to use your equipment, there is no camera that is so good that it's going to take good pictures. You really just need to learn how to take pictures, what makes a good picture, how to edit your pictures, how to compose your pictures. Learn how to use the camera before you go and invest in a big fancy camera. It's not going to make all the difference, I promise you. Like I said, I've seen amazing pictures taken with an iPhone, and I've seen crappy pictures taken with an expensive DSLR. It's not the camera. I mean, a camera is a tool. You can give someone the most expensive knives and pots, they are not going to be a 5-star chef. You can give somebody the same golf clubs that Tiger Woods uses, they're not going to be an amazing golfer. They need to learn how to use that tool. And it's the same with photography. Lizzie asked, what's your favorite theme or subject to photograph? And I've just answered that. And also, what famous person would you want to photograph? I honestly can't think of a famous person that I would really want to photograph. I'm not really into portrait photography at the moment, so there's nobody that I'm thinking that's a person I want to take a picture of. And I'm not really into celebrities either. Like, I look through women's gossip magazines and I literally don't know who anybody is. I can't think of a famous person that I would love to photograph, sorry. Melody asked, what is the one thing when taking a shot that would make an amateur's photos better? Again, I'm going to have some videos coming with some tips, but one tip would be learn to see the light. Photographs can't happen without light. A photograph is capturing light, that's what it is. And even photographs taken at night, you're going to have a long shutter speed to let in enough light to make the exposure. So that's all photography is, it's capturing light. And when you can learn to see the light, you can take better pictures. You can learn how to use that to take better pictures. And what I mean by see the light, I don't mean like, oh look, it's daylight, it's not dark. I mean, look at the quality of the light. Is it harsh light with harsh shadows and it's very bright like you would get on a sunny day at noon? Or is it really soft diffused light which you would get on an overcast day? You can tell by the shadows, like if it's hard light or soft light. You can look at the different temperatures of light. So golden hour is an hour before sunset and the sun's coming in at an angle through the atmosphere, and it's going to be really golden and soft, and that's a great time to take pictures. Blue light is the hour after dawn, so it's really soft again, it's at an angle again, and it's going to be cooler. So learn to see the differences in light. Look at something in your garden, for example, like maybe you've got a rock or a plant or something that is there all the time. Look at it every day in different times of the day, in different weathers, in different light conditions, and see if you can see how the light falls on that object, what shadows are created, what angle the light's coming in at. Move around it to see how it looks from different angles during different light, how it looks backlit, how it looks with the light falling on it or from the side. Learn to see the light. I promise you your pictures will be that much better. Andrea asked, how do you find the right balance and angle in landscape shots? Oh, I'm not an expert at landscapes at all. I'm more of a macro details kind of a person than a big picture person. The right angle, the angle is completely up to you. It depends on what story you're trying to tell about the scene that you see. Is it the sense of space or loneliness or busyness? Is it crowded? Are there lots of people there? What is the weather doing? What is the light doing? So that angle will depend on you if you want to look down on something or look up on something. There's no hard and fast rules or anything. Finding the right balance, I would follow the rule of thirds. You don't want to put your horizon bang straight across the center of the image. That's very static and very boring. The only time you would want to do that with a landscape is if you're taking a reflection shot and it's a very still day, and let's say you're facing a lake and the water is perfectly calm and there's a forest there and it's perfectly reflected in the water. For that image you would want to put the horizon centered through the middle of the picture because it will show the exact mirror image reflection. But other than that, for landscapes, move your horizon down or up onto a third. So rather than taking a picture with a horizon straight through the middle, you might want to move it down onto a third, the bottom third, and show more of the sky. Or you can move it to the top third and convey a sense of space with the ground. So it's up to you which way you want to go, but try not to put it dead on the center. And if you're taking a picture of any body of water, the sea, a lake, anything, please get your horizon exactly straight. And if it's not straight, that's the first thing you'll do in post-processing is straighten your horizon, or it's just going to look off. She also asks, where does a beginner start at choosing a camera? I have an old SLR camera and lens that require film and I would like to update. Okay, if you already have a camera and lens and you want to switch from film to digital, I would stick with the same brand so you can continue using your lens and you're not going to have to replace that. So if you have a Canon camera and lens and you don't want to use that camera anymore, buy a new Canon or used Canon body that will still fit your lens. To answer the broader question of where does a beginner start at choosing a camera, I'm a Canon girl. It doesn't mean it's any better than Nikon or Panasonic or Sigma or Olympus or Sony. There's so many good cameras. Canon is what I started with and I've stuck with it because I began building a collection of lenses up and I didn't want to have to replace them all. So I would go with any of the Canon Rebel series, I think it's called in the US. I would start with something like 450D, 550D, 650D. I wouldn't go older than maybe 450D, but those are all great cameras and you can pick them up for relatively inexpensive on eBay. I've bought camera equipment, bodies, lenses on eBay, and I've never had a problem, except once I had a problem with a lens and I opened a dispute and I ended up getting my money back. So I'd recommend buying secondhand to start with, just to keep the costs down, because I promise you very soon you're going to be wanting lenses and filters and tripods and flashes and all kinds of things. There's always something on the wish list. Sharon asked, I never know which setting to use to let light in so on an overcast day the picture is not too dark. Okay, there's 3 things you can do to let more light into your camera, and you can do one or all of them. You want to open up your aperture super wide, so the lower the number the wider your aperture. So f-stop 22 will be a very small aperture and let in less light than say f-stop 2.8, which is a very wide aperture. So depending on how far down your lens will stop, some of mine only go down to f-stop 5.6. I have one that goes down to f-stop 2.8. You want to just open up the aperture as wide as it can go. But remember that that's going to give you a very shallow depth of field, so keep that in mind. Second thing you can do is extend your shutter speed. A fast shutter speed is going to open that shutter for a very short amount of time, which will let less light in. So the slower that is, the more light you're going to let in. However, if you go too slow, then you're going to get camera shake. It's going to show as blur in your images. So for handheld, I wouldn't go slower than maybe an 80th of a second, or even a 60th of a second would be kind of borderline. Any slower than that and you're going to need a tripod. And then the third thing you can do is bump up your ISO. The higher your ISO, the more sensitive your sensor is going to be and the less light you're going to need, but you're going to start getting grain. The higher your ISO goes, the more grain you're going to get, or like digital noise you're going to get in your image. So try to keep it to about 800 or less if possible. You can go up to 1600 or even higher, but you're really going to start to lose quality. If you're still struggling with a high ISO and a wide open aperture and as slow of a shutter speed as you can handhold, then you need to add additional light. You're going to have to add in a flash or something else. Bear in mind that you can fill in light with things like reflectors. You can use those little silver cake boards, you know, the little boards that you put a cake onto. You can use those as reflectors. I've got a blog post talking about that, which I will link up here for you. Bounce some light back onto the subject and fill in some of the shadows, and that can also help. Mary Ellen says, I love photographs like yours that are lighter and brighter, if that's the way to describe it. I have tried various things like adjusting modes, shutter speed and ISO, but what is the best combination of settings to achieve that consistently? There's no one set of settings because your light's going to vary and there's so many variables that's going to affect which settings you use. I don't know about other cameras, but Canon cameras tend to want to underexpose slightly. So I have my camera set up to overexpose by at least a third, usually 2/3 of a stop. That's just how it's set all the time. So I'm already starting with a slightly brighter image. I also shoot in RAW, which I highly recommend. You can tweak so much in RAW. It makes such a big difference to your actual file quality. When you shoot in JPEG, immediately that's a compressed file. You've lost information, you've lost digital information in that image. When you shoot in RAW, all that information is still in there. You can tweak exposure, shadows, brightness, contrast, clarity, saturation, all sorts of things. It's a game changer. So I shoot in RAW and I will bump the exposure there if I want to brighten it up slightly. And then I always add a little bit of contrast, a little bit of clarity, and a little bit of saturation, just to give them a bit of a boost. You are not going to have a high contrast, high saturation image straight out of camera, especially if you shoot in RAW. Post-processing is essential. If you set your camera to boost the saturation, you might notice that your reds and oranges and hot pinks, which are difficult to photograph anyway, are just going to go nuclear and you're going to start getting what's called banding. So you don't really want to boost it in camera, rather tweak it later, especially if you are dealing with a tricky color. You can tweak it in areas. So you don't want to really boost things like that in camera. If you're boosting your contrast in camera, you can start blowing out your highlights, which means it loses all digital information and it's just plain white. There's no texture or shape to it. You can start blocking your shadows, which means that they become pure black. Again, there's no information in it. So I would do all of that in RAW. I use Photoshop and I always shoot in RAW, like I said, and I'll open the image in RAW, tweak what I want to, and then do any further edits that I want or cropping in Photoshop. Also, again, light your subject. Make sure that it is well lit and there aren't harsh shadows and dark areas. That's going to give you a brighter image to start with. Lauren asked, do you have any tips for photographing flat lays? I don't really shoot many flat lays, but the tips that I would give is if you're going to be taking a picture like down onto a flat lay, try and make sure your camera is flat and not kind of tilted one way or the other. Also, just tweak things, put it out how you think looks good, look through the camera, take a picture and then look at the picture, because sometimes that can look different to how it looks in real life. Just move things and tweak things, and don't be afraid of empty space, because that can actually add more of a focus on the item that you want to focus on rather than it's being lost amongst a bunch of things. And it can also kind of lead your eye into the image. That goes for any image really. Don't be afraid of leaving empty space. It's better that than too many focal points and the eye doesn't know where to look. So yeah, lay your goodies out, have a play, take lots and lots of photographs and check them all along and tweak things as you go. Again, it might look great in camera, but then when you get it up onto your computer, not quite right. So just keep on tweaking things and keep on checking things. Nemet asked, can you do a beginner's guide? Coming soon, I promise. And what gear to buy first? Okay, to start with, if you're wanting to get into photography proper, like a DSLR with lenses and all that jazz, I would buy a secondhand camera. You can always upgrade later, but you don't want to outlay a lot of money for something that you might change your mind about later. So I would just go for a secondhand camera with the kit lens. I think the lens is 18 to 55, the one that comes as standard with the camera. You can buy one new, I mean, go for it if you've got the money, but I wouldn't splash out too much cash on lenses and things. So you've got your camera, you've got the basic kit lens that it comes with, you start taking pictures. You'll start to realize what you need next. I began taking pictures and I was doing portraits and I was doing it in my home, and I began to realize I needed a wider angle because I was having to stand too far back to get everyone into the picture. So I knew, okay, I need a lens with a wider angle. Or you might be taking pictures of your child playing sports and realize I really need a zoom, I can't get close enough. Then you know you need to get a telephoto lens. Or you might be trying to take pictures of flowers and you're trying to get up close and your lens won't allow you to get close enough for those macro shots. Then you know you need a macro lens or you need extension tubes. So as you use your camera, you'll find out what you need next. She also asked me to share any online resources also to learn. I bought a general photography book but stopped there. No camera yet, but my phone. Okay, so you have mentioned about buying gear. I assume you're intending to go beyond your phone. But honestly, your phone is amazing. It's in your hand, it's with you all the time, it's quick to use. Use your phone. Learn how to take good pictures, learn what makes a good picture, learn which of your images are good and which aren't, and build on your strengths. You can do so much with your phone. There's editing apps and things as well where you can pull those images into Photoshop if you want to tweak them. I know you can't shoot on RAW on your phone, but it's a great place to start. Honestly, the camera you have is the best camera to start with. When you start getting into a DSLR and expanding in that way, I would recommend the book Understanding Exposure by Brian Peterson. It's fantastic. That's the book I learned on. It was recommended to me by other photographers. When you have this camera and it has all these settings and you're like, ISO, shutter speed, apertures, like how does this all work? How do I use my camera in manual? How does it make a picture? It's a bit overwhelming, and this book breaks it down. I'll link it down below for you. It's easy to read. I read it and I was like, okay, I can use my camera in manual. It cleared everything up for me. There's only one person I know, and that's my cousin Diane, who did not get on with that book, but her brain works differently to other people's. I love you, Diane, you know I do. You're the only person I know who that book didn't work for, but everyone else that I've recommended it to, it was really helpful. It was really helpful to me, so I highly recommend that. But you asked about online resources, and that's a book, not an online resource. I'm aware that I have not answered your question. Forums are great because you can interact with other people, you can ask questions, you can do a search if you have a question and see if it's already been answered. You can upload your own images to get constructive criticism. You can say, why doesn't this image work? There's something off, I don't understand what I did wrong, and people can kind of steer you in the right direction and teach you a few things. Bear in mind, for anybody judging your photographs or giving you constructive criticism, it's just their opinion. Take it or leave it. Don't let it kind of dull your passion or make you think that you're no good. See what you agree with, see what you don't agree with, try and learn from it, and then move on. Don't let it discourage you if somebody is picking your images apart. You have to put your pride in your pocket if you're wanting to learn. Now, the forums that I used to be on when I was learning was 2 Peas in a Bucket had a photography board. They are no longer in existence. And ILP, or I Love Photography, also no longer in existence. I'm sorry, I don't have a current forum or group to recommend to you, but I'm pretty sure there's some out there. Flickr is also a wonderful photography site. It's basically a place to share photographs. You can share your own images. Here is my photo stream and the images that I've shared on Flickr. You can follow other people, you can favorite pictures. When you click on an image, the great thing is you can see all of the EXIF data. It will show you there which camera was used, what lens was used, what was the focal length, what was the ISO, what was the shutter speed, what was the aperture. You can learn so much by looking at other people's photographs and then looking at which settings they used to take those photographs. Those settings might not necessarily work for you because you live in a different place, you have different light levels. The quality of light and the amount of light here in New Zealand is so different to England. It was one of the things I was most looking forward to, and it has not disappointed. But you can still get a kind of idea of what settings take which pictures. Also, if you're wanting to do something in particular, then just Google it. If you want to take pictures of the moon, then Google how do I take pictures of the moon, and there will be settings for you to try. Somebody will have posted something online which will teach you how to do that. The best way to learn is get yourself a digital camera and just go for it. You can learn so much by doing, because you can take pictures, you can see them instantly, you can try different things straight away. It's free. Once you've got your camera, those pictures are free. You can just take as many as you want. So just go for it and try different things, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's how you learn. And then a few people asked me, do I sell my prints or my images? I don't actually sell my images at the moment, partly because I have no idea how to price them. If anybody wants to help me out there, feel free to leave a comment below. I wouldn't even know where to start in pricing just prints or the files. Also, getting anything shipped from New Zealand is exorbitant. So by the time I've paid for a good quality print and the shipping, and added on what I want to charge for my time and the image, and then shipping to get it to you, it's going to be a lot of money. If you want to pay a lot of money, that's great, make me an offer, but I just feel like I'm going to have to price too high to make that kind of viable. If you see an image of mine that you really want and you want it as a digital file, which is the easiest way for me to get it to you, make me an offer. But what you might not know is that for patrons who sign up on my Patreon account, which I've linked down below, and if they sign up for $5 or more a month as their subscription, I actually provide full-size images of my photography there as a reward. So if you want pictures, that's how you can go about getting them. They're just for personal use. You can print them, you can use them as a desktop background on your computer. Please don't use them for commercial use, but that's how to obtain them if you would like. That's all the questions I have. I hope this has been helpful. If you have any more photography related questions, just leave them down below and I can do another video like this, or if I don't get enough to make a video, I'll just reply to you in the comments. Thank you to those who did submit questions. I really appreciate it, and thank you for watching. I will see you in the next one.